it's not that we need to encourage people to upgrade, right? Because that's a really expensive process. And I think it's worthwhile, and you don't need to do anything to incentivize people to upgrade. They're going to upgrade to keep up with the competition regardless, right? I think the far more important question is, how do we make it so that the continued existence of these protocols is less damaging?
What's up, Beta Nation? Welcome to Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. I'm your host here for Reed. Today, I'm going to be joined for a part 2 deep dive into the Sundaeswap protocol. If you guys missed my last sit down with Pi, the founder of the first ever AMM to launch here on Cardano, we jumped into their V3 protocol where we literally highlighted everything from A to Z that's coming with this brand new version of the platform. So please make sure to check that out. Again, that's a really great intro into today's conversation, where we're going to be talking a little bit more generally around the Sunday protocol. So we're going to be hitting on things, for example, like margin features coming to the platform. I also want to talk to him about marketing strategies and growth for 2024, as well as just anything else that we may not have touched on relating to the Sunday protocol. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and introduce to you guys Pi from Sundaeswap. Pi, welcome back. Again, good to see you.
Yeah, hi again. Thanks for having me on again.
You are completely welcome. Let's kick things off. I mean, I feel like we had such a nice conversation in the last chat, again, touching on all the different types of features and order types coming to Sunday V3. But for anybody who's maybe brand new to Cardano and just hasn't heard of Sundaeswap, can you give us that elevator pitch as to what Sundaeswap is and what they've done here for Cardano?
Yeah, so I am the CTO of Sunday Labs. We're kind of a general blockchain technology company building on Cardano. And our flagship project is a set of contracts that we wrote that we refer to as the Sunday Protocol. And so this is a set of smart contracts that enable an AMM, automated market maker, swap experience on Cardano. We launched this in late January of 2022. So we just passed our 2-year anniversary, which is crazy to me. And have been, continuing to push the envelope of what's possible on Cardano. Apologies. What's possible on Cardano, and we, are getting ready to launch a new version of those contracts called Sunday V3.
Thank you there. First and foremost, obviously, big congrats on the 2-year anniversary. I know just building in regular Web 2 is an extremely difficult task. I've got a job as a consultant, which allows for me to kind of see into that, but I can only imagine the amount of pressure with the ever-changing ecosystem in Web 3, how much harder that makes it to build here. So the fact that you guys have been here for 2 years, I think is a huge achievement that you guys should be extremely proud of. In
Thank you.
addition, for the viewers, no, you're completely welcome. In addition, for the viewers, following our last chat, you guys have now officially released the Sundaeswap V3 white paper. So for anybody who wants to just dive in a little bit deeper, I would say, number one, obviously listen to the last video where Pi breaks everything down as to what we can expect. But if you want to go even further, check out that brand new white paper, which was just released by Pi and the entire Sundaeswap team. So for today's video, we're not going to be touching too much on V3. That's what we did in the first installment, but I want to talk a little bit more about just Plutus in general. So you're a very well-known developer. You're contributing a lot to the space. And I think that that last video really kind of showed your expertise. We just got a release of an article from Tim and the entire team at IOG surrounding Plutus V3, now live on the Sancho net. Do you mind maybe just kind of breaking down what your thoughts are surrounding Plutus V3, some of the enhancements, and then I've got a follow-up question surrounding how we can kind of push everybody else in the ecosystem towards adoptions of the brand new versions and enhancements that comes with this brand new version of Plutus.
Sure. So naming can be really hard. And so for those, I'll try to just break it down briefly for those who aren't aware. The virtual machine, the byte code that Cardano runs in order to validate a smart contract transaction, is called UPLC, Untyped Plutus Core. And this is a very formally verified machine that can kind of evaluate computation and decide whether a transaction is valid or not. On top of that, or kind of in parallel to that, the machine can have multiple different semantics. And these are basically just, what are the built-in functions that are available to it? Can it multiply numbers? Can it, do different cryptographic operations, things like that? And how is the node expected to pass data into the contract? So, in Plutus v1, for example, so that if you hear Plutus v1, Plutus v2, Plutus v3, they refer to the semantics on top of that virtual machine. And it's basically making changes to how we communicate the transaction, what's called the script context, into the code. And so, like, when we introduced reference scripts, right? Plutus v1 was created before reference scripts existed, and so there's just no field to pass that information in. And so Plutus v2 was adding that field along with a bunch of other things. On top of that is a language called Plutus TX that is a version of Haskell that compiles down into UPLC. So that can get really confusing. There are other languages that compile into UPLC, like Aiken. And so, people ask, oh, does Aiken support Plutus v2? The answer is yes, because Plutus v2 is those semantics and it's not tied to Plutus TX itself. In terms of like what the different versions are, Plutus v1 was the first version of smart contracts that was released. Plutus v2, the main things that it added were inline datums and reference scripts. It added a bunch of other stuff too, but those were kind of the two most important ones. And that basically allowed you to avoid repeating data a bunch in every transaction. And it allowed you to make your transaction sizes, when you included smart contracts, like 90% smaller. So it was a huge step change. The performance increase between them is huge, and not just for the Dapp that you're executing, but for like, I kind of picture it like pollution, right? So a Plutus v1 contract is creating a lot of pollution that impacts the usability of other contracts as well, because it's taking up a lot of space that could have been, put to another protocol or another contract from another protocol. And then Plutus v3 is much like, it still has a lot of exciting features. I don't want to downplay it, but it's not as critical for people to upgrade as v1 to v2 was, because it includes like some new cryptographic primitives for BLS primitives. It includes bitwise primitives, things that, like, if you have a use for them, great, go upgrade, build a protocol using them. But you're not going to be damaging those around you, damaging the experience for others on the blockchain if you use Plutus v2 versus Plutus v3. So, for example, the Sunday v3 contracts are using Plutus v2 because we don't feel like we can really wait for the Conway hard fork to deploy our contracts. We want to deploy as soon as possible, and there's nothing in Plutus v3 that's going to like be an order of magnitude difference for us, right? Like, oh, maybe we could do something simpler with the bitwise primitives, but it's not going to make that big of a difference.
I appreciate, again, your technical expertise here, breaking down Plutus v1, v2, and v3, and just kind of expounding on the fact that, yes, v3 is brand new. It's obviously just still on the test net, so a lot of people aren't able to take advantage, or I guess nobody's able to take advantage of it on the main net, but it doesn't necessarily stop people from deploying v2. Now, within Cardano, there's been a huge push because, again, I think you mentioned the biggest difference is from v1 to v2, not necessarily from v2 to v3, even though v3 is ideally where we'd love for everybody to be. There are still a ton of protocols that are utilizing v1 which, as you mentioned, are somewhat bleeding out or polluting the experience for other developers here, right? So with you guys at Sundaeswap, you guys are taking a proactive step to upgrade to V2, not only improving the Sundaeswap protocol itself, but also improving the environment for others that are building around you, right? Taking load and just making things more efficient for everybody else. So my next question to you, and if obviously, you're only one person with one vantage point, but again, you have a lot of experience. What do you think we can do to incentivize builders to upgrade to V2? Because again, that weighs and benefits everybody else.
Yeah, and I think, that's maybe the wrong way to look at it. When we build on Web3, we build forever. So the Sunday V1 protocol is going to exist forever. It will always be there on chain. Somebody will always be able to execute against it. And because, some meme coins have burned their LP tokens, it will always have liquidity, right? And so, as long as there is still trading happening on those tokens, at some point it'll represent an arbitrage opportunity. And so somebody will be submitting a Sunday V1 protocol, right? Um, and I would be really wary of any project who tells you they can shut down their protocol, right? So like this isn't even something that we could decide to shut down. Now we could, remove support in the UI. We could tell the scoopers to upgrade to a version that like of the scooper software that ignores V1 contracts. So like in theory, there are ways that we can reduce the volume on the V1 protocol, but ultimately it's really hard for us to actually do that because we're building in a decentralized space. We're building in a Web3 code is law permanent space. And so these protocols are going to exist forever. So it's not that we need to encourage people to upgrade, right? Because that's a really expensive process. And I think it's worthwhile, and you don't need to do anything to incentivize people to upgrade. They're going to upgrade to keep up with the competition regardless, right? Every single major DEX is working on a Plutus V2 version of their contracts. I think the far more important question is how do we make it so that the continued existence of these protocols is less damaging? I mean, I submitted a SIP 110 that basically it's a very simple solution. We say, hey, let's let Plutus V1 contracts be satisfied by a reference script input. Initially, the team didn't do this because they were worried that like it would be breaking backwards compatibility in that you would theoretically be able to write a Plutus V1 contract that could tell that it was not being run, in the same era as it was originally written, and that theoretically could break some contract somewhere. I think this is too draconian of an outlook, and I think the Ledger team has come around to my point of view since. And so SIP 110 just got accepted into the Conway roadmap, and so basically what it's going to allow those who are running the contracts that use Plutus V1 contracts is take advantage of reference scripts. And then you still have the batch size problems where Sunday V1 is never going to be able to support 35 orders like Sunday V3, but at least we're not taking up a huge chunk of the block space that other protocols could be using. And so I think that solves most of the problem and most of the impetus to upgrade. And any remaining impetus will just be, the competitive advantage that will drive people to upgrade when it makes sense for their protocol and their users. And I think that kind of mostly solves the problem without having to look at like really controversial measures like banning Plutus V1 scripts or anything like that.
For anybody who wants to find out more about your SIP, how can they do that?
Yeah, so you can go onto GitHub, and there is a project called CIPS under either the Cardano Foundation or Intersect. I don't know if they moved it. I think it's still the Cardano Foundation. And just look for a pull request for CIP10. Otherwise, that's pretty complicated. I've tweeted about it a bunch, and I'm sure you can add it as a link in the description on this video.
Yep, I will definitely go ahead and leave the link to it down below in the show notes. Again, I think really a testament to your commitment to the Cardano community, right? Thinking about these issues that maybe others aren't necessarily focusing on because they want to focus on their protocol. But this, I think, has an impact on the entire efficiency of the ecosystem and, of course, on the amount of load at any point in time on the Cardano blockchain. So I am definitely there to support you, and I wish you all the best with the implementation of the SIP 110.
Thank you.
Let's keep the conversation moving and kind of now pivot back over into Sundaeswap. Um, we have had Catalyst, which has just wrapped up. Significantly less proposals this time around in Fund 11 as compared to funding round number 10. I think there was only about 900 proposals, but I was able to find a few which had the Sundaeswap name attached to them. One of them was surrounding margin pools or margin trading. Do you mind explaining to the community, what the premise or what the idea is behind that proposal? And, what can we expect with a brand new feature like margin trading on Cardano?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a kind of proposed extension to the Sunday protocol. One of the things I talked about in our first video was how we want to allow new pool types and innovation in that area. And so the whole Sunday protocol has been designed to allow that and to work well if new pool types get added, so that we don't have to do a Sunday v4 just to add, one feature. And one of those potential features that we've been kicking around that we aren't going to be able to make it into the launch of the protocol, because we have a document that lists ideas for things that we can build for days, and if we just continued to try to build all of those before we release something, we're going to be here for 2 years, 2 more years. And so we really kind of tried to define that cutoff point while also leaving the door open to add these new types. And one of those features that we're asking for a little bit of Catalyst funding for is this notion of a margin pool. And a margin pool, there's not really a good analog. So any of the terms that we use that draw analogies to existing products or offerings aren't going to be quite right. But it effectively allows you to trade on leverage. And so the idea here is we have a pool and something happens in the market that changes what people are willing to pay dramatically. And normally with an AMM pool, depending on the depth of that liquidity, it could require a lot of arbitrage to bring that price in line, either up to the new price or down to, maybe some big disaster happened and the price is going to drop. It takes a lot of trading for that to happen, because the deeper the liquidity in the pool, the slower the price changes. And any of that is value that's lost to the liquidity providers, because it's value that the arbitrageurs are extracting, right? They're getting to buy high and then sell low somewhere else where that is more reactive to the market, or they're getting to buy low and then sell high somewhere else. I may have gotten one of those backwards, but so what a margin pool does is allows somebody to make a bet that the price is going to move in a specific direction. They can say, hey, I only have 100 ADA. I want to swap as if I had 1,000 ADA. And so the reserves, it'll create these virtual reserve balances where it's adjusted the price to as if you had made a larger swap, and releases those tokens, as if you had swapped with 1,000 ADA instead of 100 ADA at 10x leverage. But instead of releasing it to your wallet where you could just run away with it, oh, good, you found this. Instead of just releasing that liquidity to your wallet where you could run away with it, it locks it in a smart contract. And then if the price does move in the direction that you bet on, basically, you can unwind your position. So say I've swapped 10 or 100 ADA as if it on 10x leverage, and that's gotten me 10,000 Sunday. And then the price of Sunday increases, and I can then swap that 10,000 Sunday back through the pool, which will result in more ADA, and I can keep the difference, right? I have to pay off my debt, but I can keep that difference. And so it kind of creates this opportunity to take advantage of these larger price swings and help the margin pool find its price faster, right? With less capital requirement. This is beneficial for the market because it finds the price faster, and is value that is captured for the liquidity providers, because they're not kind of just constantly getting arbitraged out of that position. And it's another source of protocol revenue for the liquidity providers, because if the price doesn't move in that direction, you're basically paying an interest rate on it. And if that interest rate ever kind of exceeds what you put in, it gets liquidated back into the pool. And so the liquidity providers just get that extra interest payment. And it also, in order to unwind, you have to pay whatever interest payment you've accrued. So it's an extra source of income for liquidity providers. It's an extra source of efficiency for finding the market price to the market. And it's a new primitive or instrument that people can use in their trading strategies. So we think this will be really cool. Mainly the big open questions are like, how do we exactly define the risk model, and what are, because like you don't get anything for free, what are the additional risks in maybe volatility that the liquidity provider is taking on? And we want to kind of really strongly define that before we implement it, so that like people know what they're getting into.
I appreciate you breaking that down. I was just actually showing it earlier, but there is a proof of concept which is available at margin-poc.versal.app. Of course, I'll go and leave the links to that down below in the show notes if you guys want to begin to just kind of play around with this margin simulator. I think my question, or just one of the comments I wanted to add there, was what you highlighted towards the very end, was just with respect to the additional risks, right? So obviously you've kind of talked about the benefit for the liquidity providers, them, not having their opportunity taken away by arbitrageurs, et cetera, being able to kind of reset the value of the pool back to what the market thinks it should be. But I want to highlight, what is the downside from an LP provider's perspective if they were to go ahead, open up a margin position, and then the price goes the other way. I think on traditional markets, right, it's where you get liquidated, you're basically put out of your position, and at that point you have to kind of restart from zero. You have no more ownership. You may have like 2 or 3% of what you initially put up. So this is not only a tool that helps you to win big, but also potentially lose from a risk perspective. So can you maybe talk about the other side of the equation as well?
Yeah, for sure. The risk to the trader is obvious, right? You make a bad trade on leverage, and your collateral that you put up with that gets liquidated as compensation to the liquidity providers. The risks to the liquidity providers are similar, but we don't have like a really, I can't give you a good answer to that, right? In some sense, I know that the higher volatility of that pool and the higher risk that people are making trades that are in opposition to the market could result in kind of higher impermanent loss potentially. But I can't like really rigorously define that or say for sure that that is a risk or how big that risk is. And that's a big part of why we didn't just go ahead and build it, is we want to sit down and like really go through the game theory of mapping out what the potential outcomes are and what the risks really are, and what that put some numbers on that so that we can really communicate that to the user.
Thank you, Pi. Let's keep the conversation rolling. There's an additional proposal between yourself and, I believe it's Core Labs, right? The
Yep.
builders of Ada Handle. I don't think they need an introduction. A lot of people use them. And I actually saw you recently partnered with them to release your own Sundaeswap specific backgrounds as a part of the second cohort. So if you guys are interested in Sundaeswap, you want a little nice piece of collaboration between them and Ada Handle, jump over to handle.me and you can actually mint utilizing Sunday specific backgrounds. Now, this second proposal is featured or is labeled as regulated and permissioned DeFi with Sunday and Core Labs. I remember seeing this, I think, proposed in funding round number 10, and there was a lot of backlash towards you and the Ada Handle team with, I think, just the name of the actual proposal, right? People saw permission in DeFi and were like, that doesn't go hand in hand. Can you explain what this proposal is meant to do and where it falls into the Cardano community?
Yeah, so this is actually new in Fund 11. It wasn't
I,
in Fund 10, but we did get a lot of backlash when it was first published for basically two reasons. The first was, we put up a draft that wasn't the final kind of description of the proposal, and a lot of people, I think, fairly interpreted it as, oh, we're going to add Ada handle support on Sunday, which was ridiculous for the amount of funding that it was asking for. And so we did a whole a couple Twitter spaces to kind of clear up that confusion and make sure, no, we already support ADA handles. We were the first Dapp on Cardano to support ADA handles. They've been our friend for a long time. We also agree that asking for, I forget the exact amounts that are in the proposal, asking for that much for just adding ADA handle support would be ridiculous, etc. And second, once people did understand, there was a little bit more like head scratching around this notion of permission DeFi. I want to be really clear. I believe, and I'm working in Web3 because I believe that permissionless DeFi is essential to human rights, to the ability for people to have access to profit opportunities that are usually reserved for these, for big banks or for big hedge funds and etc. I think that, the only caveat there is that some of the more advanced financial instruments or access to, the ability to burn yourself probably need some kind of guardrails around it, because otherwise it can become a tool for financial destitution, right? Kind of serve the opposite goal. That being said, just because I believe that permissionless DeFi is hand in hand, like is essential, and I've spent, the last 3 years of my life building something to offer that to people, as has Ada Handle and as has Cora Labs, I don't think it's mutually exclusive with permissioned DeFi, with people who want to participate in a more regulated environment that enables access to liquidity or secluded markets that wouldn't otherwise be accessible. Additionally, I think there's a lot of like really cool community and Web3 based use cases for this notion of permissioned DeFi. So what this proposal is on the Cora Lab side, they want to extend the ADA handles to really deeply integrate with DIDs so that you can attach your DID to your ADA handle and have a really great user experience for accessing and browsing that, and integration with wallets and things like that. On the Sundae Lab side, we want to extend the Sundae protocol with a new pool type. So like the normal pools would continue to be permissionless, but there would be a new pool type that somebody could create that says, hey, I want to attach this additional condition on executing swaps. And that condition is up to them. So it could be, for example, maybe the society token pool, so the ADA SOAK pool, is a 5% fee. But if you have such and such NFT, the Ape Society NFT, you get access to the 1% fee pool. Right? So like there's two different pools, one with 5% fee that anybody can access, and one with a 1% fee that you can access if you have the NFT. Or maybe if you've been a Snake token holder for a long time, or whatever, right? So basically these extra conditions that people can add on to it. And one of those can be utilizing, hey, you have to have a DID that's gone through KYC AML through some kind of compliance oracle. And what this would allow is like institutional money to create pools with very, very deep liquidity, right? 100 million ADA and stablecoin pair that they can't right now, because from a regulatory perspective, the people with access to that liquidity are really worried about, the uncertain landscape that we have from in the US and the EU. And so if you have that kind of framework for a compliance regulated aspect, you can create these pools that are participating in the Cardano ecosystem and providing access to those markets to people that normally wouldn't have them, but are able to go through that process now, and kind of just broadens the horizon of the Cardano ecosystem. So that's really what that proposal is about.
I appreciate the clarity on that. And then just as a recap here, it sounds like did integration for ADA handles, but then also brand new pools that could be set up to use some sort of specific credential in order to offer benefits or just specific access to a community through something like Sundaeswap. So again, appreciate you taking the time to clarify that, because I know that did stir quite the bit of conversation, and I'm happy to now have some clarity around that for myself personally. Next, I want to talk a little bit about Butane. So Butane is a synthetics protocol that just launched on the testnet, very similar to Sundaeswap on the preview testnet as well. And there was an interesting feature where somebody was able to actually take a synthetic, mint that, but then immediately turn around and actually sell that on the Sundaeswap platform. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about your recent partnerships with Butane and where you see things like this, kind of going in the future as more features come onto synthetics platforms like this that then also turn around and benefit dexes like Sundaeswap?
Yeah. So partnership may be too strong of a word, right? Um, when our protocol went live, they reached out to us and said, "Hey, we have this idea. Would we be able to integrate?" And we said, "Yeah, sure, go for it. Here's our documentation." And they went and turned around and delivered something really fast, which was really cool. But yeah, this is kind of really going to be a common theme that we're pushing. The We want the Sunday protocol to be a component in these kind of larger flows. And so whether that is I want to mint a synthetic on Indigo or Butane and immediately sell it, or I want to buy an asset like an I asset and immediately use it to close out my CDP when that order executes. These are kind of the types of flows and types of integrations and interoperability that we want to encourage and enable. And so, they were kind of very, I don't know the right word, but like turned around a prototype of that really quickly and have a bunch of other really cool things planned using some of the features in the V3. Micah was one of our beta white paper readers. So using some of those features, they have a lot of really cool ideas for how they can make the butane protocol more efficient by having access to this like programmable ability to exchange one token for another.
Thank you for that. Let's keep the conversation rolling. I want to talk a little bit more about Gummiworm now. Um, let's say I'm brand new to Cardano. I'm just hearing about Sundaeswap for the first time. Can you explain Gummiworm to me like I'm a 5-year-old, or as people say, explain it like I'm 5? Just give us the very high overview as to what this is doing for the community.
Sure. Gummiworm is our research and development project to build a layer 2 for the Cardano ecosystem that is well suited for pooled, permissionless, custodial-less protocols. So in particular, we looked at Hydra a lot. We like a lot of what Hydra is doing, which Hydra is a state channel protocol on Cardano that enables like peer-to-peer transactions. So you and I kind of sending lunch money back and forth would be a great use case, for example, or a website settling with an ad network in real time would be another great use case for it. But it doesn't make the most, like we even had a full prototype of Sundaeswap V1 running on Hydra. But it doesn't make the most sense for a DEX because the Hydra head operators, the people who are running the Hydra network, have full custody of those funds that are in the network. And usually that's okay because the worst that you and I could do with our Hydra head is agree to steal our own funds, right? But once you start opening that protocol to thousands of people and ingesting funds from thousands of people, the kind of security semantics of it change very dramatically. And so what we're doing is we're looking at ways to tweak Hydra to enable kind of more modularity and plug and play so that things like the custody of funds can be handled by a different mechanism while the execution and the API and the consensus among Hydra heads can still be really fast and instant settlement. And we can keep that property of it while not putting user funds at direct risk from those Hydra head operators. And so it's a very long-term project. Sometimes we're working on it, sometimes we have to focus on other things. So it's, we're not constantly working on it. So progress is slower than I might like. But we're really hoping to be able to push. We're really happy about 35 orders per batch every 20 seconds, or multiple times per 20 seconds in Sunday V2 or V3. But you could imagine a version with 1,000 orders per batch that has instant finality, so it executes as soon as you place your order. That would be totally possible within a Gummiworm style protocol. Now, don't quote me on
That's
those exact numbers. I haven't done benchmarking, but like you can really scale it up, and it could be really exciting.
Yeah, that sounds extremely impressive. I'm sure that nobody needs to be reminded of some of the struggles that we have here in Cardano with respect to scaling and how eager everybody is to get their hands on things like Hydra. And so I'm happy to hear that, you're taking it upon yourself with obviously the help of the Sunday team to also kind of put your hands to the plow when it comes to scalability with the release of something like Gummiworm. Now, earlier we were able to touch on some proof of concepts that you guys have released. Is there anything that's sort of publicly available, or maybe just even internally available for you guys to begin to kind of put your hands out there and to kind of start to test some of these theories with respect to Gummiworm?
Yeah, I mean, we've been building it internally, and we've got some proof of concepts on, in particular, uh, two of our Fund 10 Catalyst proposals were related to extensions to the Hydra node to be able to run Hydra in an offline mode where you aren't, dependent on the Cardano layer one, and you aren't dependent on reaching consensus among a set of nodes. This serves one role within the Gummiworm protocol, and we're also working on ability to um, basically exfiltrate data from the Hydra node better so that you can get access to the internals from an external API and, for example, stream transactions to a socket or a file on disk or things like that. And so both of those are kind of components within our larger Gummiworm strategy. We've also shown demos of the kind of archive format that we're developing for storing a large number of transactions in a robust and kind of authenticated way. The basic idea is then you could have a Hydra head executing the transactions, but with no access to the user's funds, and they store and ship off those transactions to a separate set of prover or validator nodes that is a much broader kind of consensus that can kind of pick through those and validate. So that archive format, we've also shown demos running that. And we've got a proposal in Fund 11 to like officially specify and detail exactly how the Gummiworm protocol is going to work, what those file formats are, what the network protocols are, all that kind of stuff.
Thank you for that. I think the results for funding round number 11 actually should be released tomorrow. So if you guys are approved, I'd love to definitely have you back here on the channel to talk a little bit more about the proposal and exactly how you guys plan on implementing and executing on that moving forward. Now, as we get ready to kind of close this down, this is a much shorter interview than our previous one, but I do enjoy all the insights that you bring. I want to talk a little bit about marketing and growth. So Sundaeswap, as you mentioned, has just hit their 2-year anniversary. You guys have been around the ecosystem for quite a bit of time. With the release of Sundaeswap V3, given the fact that the market is just a lot more saturated than it was 2 years ago, what are some of your plans with respect to getting new users on the platform, providing incentivization methods, or just incentivizing for more people to come onto Sundaeswap and give it a look with the V3 release?
Yeah. So the kind of first layer of that question is it's not up to us, right? Like ultimately, the DAO is in control of the Sunday protocol. Sunday Labs just happens to be, the company that wrote the code for it. And obviously, we still have a very strong vested interest, and we're going to be making recommendations to the DAO for how we would like to proceed or what we think the best path is. But ultimately, it's going to be up to Sunday token holders to vote on, for example, the Sunday V3 protocol is bringing in a lot of protocol treasury revenue. How do we spend that? Do we create an incentive program for Sunday token holders? Do we spend it on, accelerating the R&D for different things? Do we, buy protocol owned liquidity? So ultimately, it's going to be up to them. If you're asking me personally, what I think the best approach is I think that seeing how that protocol treasury develops, how much it brings in, what the kind of excitement is, and using that one to fund incentive programs that focus on the growth of the ecosystem. So either liquidity buyback or bringing people in to participate in governance. So like a governance participation incentive or things like that would be really interesting. And focus on funding projects that can build out those partnerships with other protocols. So things like the Butane using Sundaeswap to sell your order. Things like integrating with I won't spoil any of the other kind of things that we've got in the pipeline of who we're talking with, but basically, really trying to make SundaeSwap this primitive that's used across the ecosystem, because then people can be using SundaeSwap without even realizing they're using SundaeSwap, and I think that's really powerful, right? Um, and then finally, in terms of what Sunday Labs's approach to this year is going to be, we didn't go to any of the community events last year because we were trying to be really conscious of our runway through the bear market, and make sure that we weren't spending frivolously, and if we didn't have any big exciting thing to announce or launch or push, it didn't make a whole lot of sense for us to go. This year, obviously, with the launch of the V3 protocol, there's a lot of really exciting opportunities for us to get that Sunday name back out there, and go to some of these events. And we're even in talks with some of them to host like little mini hackathons to build on Sunday. And so the idea would be, if you have an idea that utilizes strategies or chained orders or any of the new features in Sunday V3, we'll have the Sunday team on hand to answer your questions, help you debug, help you design what the kind of thing that you want to build is. And we think those hackathons can help get people really excited. So those are kind of just some of the ideas that we're looking at this year. Obviously, there will be a lot more, a lot of publicity about new features that we build, a lot of like encouraging others to build features, and making good SDKs and documentation so that that's easy for them to do. But it's a lot to go through. So I don't know if I've been super comprehensive.
No, you have. So you mentioned liquidity buyback programs, and of course, again, a lot of this is tying back into the DAO, which will actually lead me to my final question for today. But you mentioned liquidity buyback programs, potential integrations, whether that's in-house or maybe even cross-chain integrations. I know you guys are now supported through something like Dex Hunter. So it'd be really interesting to see, if you guys can maybe strike other partnerships with people that maybe want to get access to Cardano native tokens, but maybe just through something else. There were proposals with, I believe it was Maestro and Chain, right, to allow for people coming in from the ETH ecosystem to actually purchase or swap Cardano native assets here in Cardano. And obviously that would have to go through some sort of DEX, right? So maybe hitting off some of those integrations, I think that would be great. You also talked about potential incentivization programs, as well as showing back up to events and potentially putting on things such as hackathons. So quite a bit there on the list. Again, I think you were very comprehensive in touching on all those things. But the main point there that I got was the fact that a lot of this hinges on the actual DAO. So my last and final question to you here is, for anybody who holds the Sunday token, or maybe that is thinking about holding the Sunday token, can you explain, how they can get access to the DAO and how they can make sure that their voice is heard with all these big tasks in the near future?
Yeah. So there are kind of two main avenues that governance discussion happens right now. One is we have a dedicated channel called Governance Chat in our Discord. So feel free to go there, propose your ideas, weigh in on other people's ideas, and really just participate, because at the end of the day, Sunday Labs is only one member of the Sunday ecosystem, and ultimately any decisions are going to be up to those Sunday token holders who choose to get involved. And if you have the Sunday token and you aren't getting involved, you're not kind of fully utilizing that asset, which obviously is fully your choice, but come get involved. We'd love to have you. The second is, our official governance process starts on our forum. So forum.sundaeswap.finance, where you start a temperature check. You have a discussion about, how that could be updated or whether the community is receptive to that idea. And then that can progress to a full on-chain vote. And, we've talked a lot in other avenues about our voting platform. So feel free to go look for those videos. I did a really great deep dive on Andrew Westberg's Nerd Out show and things like that. But we provide this really great kind of on-chain validatable but transaction fee-less governance system, which we think is really, really cool and really innovative.
As always, I'll go ahead and leave the links to that down below for anybody who's interested in just joining the Sunday community and participating in governance. As we get ready to close things out, Pi, anything else that you want to share here with the Cardano community with respect to Sundaeswap, Plutus V3, just anything that is going on here that you think that they should be aware of or know more about?
No, just like I was saying with governance, expect, there's a few decisions that need to be made about where to set specific settings when we launch Sunday V3, and things like should um the Sunday V1 pool still be eligible for yield farming, that the DAO is going to have to make a decision on. And so it's a really great time to start getting involved and start kind of making sure your voice is heard and you're participating in that.
Thank you so much again here for your time. Two monstrous videos surrounding everything Sunday. If you guys want to find out more about Sunday, if you guys have not already gotten a chance to test out V3 again, please check out the show notes down below. It'll have everything that you need to know to get involved, not just on the testnet, but also with governance and just access to the existing platform right now on mainnet. Piloting him joining us here from the official Sunday team. I want to thank you again so much for your time here. I know you're probably going to be making your way around other platforms over the next couple of days. Now that the white paper for V3 has been released, of course, I'll leave the link to that down below as well. As always, for the viewer watching from wherever you may be, if you guys appreciated today's video, I would appreciate you if you could smash that thumbs up. It really does make a difference here on the channel. If it's your first time stopping by Dapp Central and you want more content like this, highlighting all the different builders here in Cardano, consider subscribing to the channel. And last but not least, if you have any questions for myself or Pi surrounding Sundaeswap, Plutus V3, or anything else that we discussed here as a part of today's video, then please make sure to go ahead and leave a comment down below. That said, and as always, we'll see you guys in the next video.